Hello, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing incredibly well. Don't forget to go and spoil yourself and get yourself a fabulous drink. And this is part 2 of yesterday's story. So if you haven't heard part 1, please go back to listen to it because the whole story needs to be heard together. So let's get on to part 2, shall we? And let's continue with last night's story. My family had painstakingly taken the long 8-hour drive to the charming town of Thorpe. The once palatial house was more like a grandiose mansion that had lost some of its sparkling sheen. It ached with age, groaned from neglect, cried out for attention, like a bedraggled vagrant begging for a new outfit of clothes. It was situated about 20 minutes from the town, in a rural location, where I was about to meet the realtor, who was to show me the imposing property herself that I'd inherited, and was possibly eager to take it off my hands and put it on the market ASAP. I was not in such a hurry to make such a fleeting decision. The theatrical mansion was not what I'd anticipated. It was a 3-story colonial on about an acre's lot of land that was shaded by gnarled oaks and silver maples that were old enough to remember farmland, the town's ancient coal mining history, and the famous athlete Jim Thorpe, who was of American, Indian, Sauk and Fox descent, who won 2 gold medals for America in basketball and lacrosse, I believe it was. The Imperial House is a vision of English character and charm, offering you romantic images of large, cosy fireplaces, fabulous crystal chandeliers, and servants' quarters hidden beneath a grey slate roof. The builders had spared no expense back in the gilded optimism of 1923. My 38-year-old wife stares up at the stately brick facade, the slate windows, with an expression of wondrous awe on her face, as if she cannot believe that the stately home is officially ours, despite its dog-eared condition. My wife is an attractive woman who always wears her long dark hair swept away from her face in an uncomplicated neat ponytail. She looks more like a teenager, rather than a woman approaching 40, with a pair of fake Gucci designer glasses that she wears on top of her head like a tiara. Her sophisticated fashion sense, the silk scarf draped artfully over her shoulders, the more angular contours of her face, would probably betray her age on closer inspection, making you realise that she wasn't a teenager. But from the distance, you would certainly not know that she wasn't. I notice my wife is looking rather apprehensive. She stares up at the house, as despite its epic, stately appearance, something about this place clearly ruffles the hairs on the back of her neck, as it does mine. The realtor leads us both cordially down the flagstone path. As I glance around the property, it is clear by the looks of things that some things need fixing up, beyond the untended house itself. The verdant lawn is overgrown and tangled with weeds. The flower beds are in serious need of a good mulching, while the edging needs tidying up. The eaves of the house are peeling extensively. The whole house needs replastering and painting to restore its resplendent exterior appearance, as the existing white paint has degraded significantly over time. The dust and dirt of the natural environment has soiled the paint, invited on its surfaces a plethora of unsightly cracks. I observe a black cat with a white bib crossing our path. It stares at us for a brief moment with an air of indifference and hurriedly saunters around the building, disappearing from our sight. I love cats and wonder if he had belonged to Hogan Fisher and has now become feral, living wild, eating a diet of rats. Cats can be resourceful animals when needs must. This thought grievously upsets me, as so often, after people die, their domestic animals are easily overlooked. Me and my wife continue up the stairs of the grand portico. "Look," says the estate agent nervously, running a perfectly manicured hand through her short mane of hazel hair. "I'm going to level with the 2 of you. This house is in need of a lot of work, but for the right buyer, it's a great opportunity. In our opinion, it is worth putting on the market as is. But if you do so in the present condition, Your asking price will need to be relatively low. On the other hand, if you were to fix this place up yourselves and finally sell it, you could make a bomb. I'm afraid in its current condition, it's more likely to turn buyers away, especially with the unfortunate ominous graffiti that has been painted all over the place, some of it more than a little sinister. But try to reserve judgment, as dare I say this house has very good bones and great potential to become quite a stunner. A place like this in Boston, if in good condition, could easily set you back $3 to $4 million. Are you from Boston, sir? No, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, I say. Funny, she said. I could swear the solicitor said you were from Boston. I must have got my wires all crossed. I gasp with a measure of incredulity, as my nasal cavity is greeted to a hostile, gross smell of festering garbage filtering through the house, accompanied by damp and mildew. I observe dirty food wrappers, drug paraphernalia, strewn haphazardly over the oak floors. I realise this place has recently been used by squatters, but thankfully they have been successfully evicted. I'm stunned when I see piles of rags in the middle of the floor, tossed all over the place, flung out of what looks like a dilapidated suitcase that is falling apart at the seams. There are slogans on the wall that read, "The living dead reside here. Welcome to the death zone." Other slogans read, "Get out before it's too late. Watch your back, or I will slice a knife into your guts when you're not looking." I cringe in horror at the macabre wording, all in bright red paint. The estate agent observes my mortified expression. "It happens," she says empathetically. "You get all kinds of mean graffiti splashed over abandoned houses, especially vintage heritage homes like this, with historic influences. People always presuppose that such properties must be haunted. But if it gives you a measure of reassurance, I've never heard such rumours about this place. The custom features of the house compete with the menacing messages and the lingering scent of garbage that pollutes the air with its vile repugnance. I was sure amidst all the filth were a couple of decaying rats that were only exacerbating the revolting stench. It was hard to fathom that Hogan Fisher had lived in this sprawling mansion alone, long after his wife had died. Even for the three of us, this baronial property was way too large, and for a single couple to have lived together for so many years in this place seemed almost incomprehensible. As if reading my thoughts like a book, the realtor intercedes. "Look, the man who lived in this property was away a lot. By all accounts, he never did any maintenance work on the place after his wife died. You'll see when we get to the top floor. One section is very pristine, with a kitchen area that flows into a sitting room. It would appear that the gentleman lived in the restored section of the property all the time, like living in your own apartment. But he willfully abandoned the rest of the house. It just got too much for him. I think he never had the heart to sell the place. It represented his long, happy marriage and all the beautiful memories that accompanied it. So it would be like letting his wife go. I guess if you were fixing this place, you could move into that section of the property, while the house was being refurbished and brought back to speed, that is. If that is your intention, of course." "But I don't understand why a couple live in a place this large," I asked, looking quite flummoxed. "It was clearly too big for the both of them. They were out of their depth." "Oh, you don't know then? The couple in their younger days always had foster kids living here. About 12 children, I gather it was. They didn't have children of their own, you see. They so wanted a large family. I believe I have something for you," she says suddenly, fiddling around in her purse and bringing out a letter for me. "This, I believe, is for you. The attorney asked me to pass it your way." I take the letter eagerly. "Give me a moment while I read this," I tell the both of them. I open the letter, which reads, "Dear Cole, you're probably wondering why a perfect stranger you met on a Royal Caribbean cruise liner is leaving you their estate, as we only got acquainted over 8 days on that trip. I've been on a plethora of cruises around the world, but no one has cordially come up to me like you did so naturally, or even shown any interest in me. You were a friend to me on that cruise,
I enjoyed and appreciated our conversations. Not only did you remind me of my brother Cole, but you also have a very similar sense of humour to him. We had some very good laughs together, the two of us. After my wife died, I was a very lonely man. But for 8 days on that cruise liner, I didn't experience loneliness, thanks to your very great kindness, and for that I will be eternally grateful. It is for this reason that I am leaving you most of my estate. Of course, I have given a sizable amount of money to my foster children, so they have been taken care of in this regard. But I never believe in leaving young people too much money. It invites laziness, reduces the seeds of ambition. So showering them with too much money would be doing them a vast disservice, in my humble opinion, that is. In regards to this house you will be inheriting, it was at one time rather grand. For its time, that is. But it does require a great deal of work. But it might be worth salvaging, if of course you have the energy to do so. Yours truly, with very great appreciation, Hogan Fisher.
What did the letter say? Asks my wife, as the realtor leads us to other parts of the house.
He left me the house, I whisper, because I made a lonely old man feel less lonely. He doesn't want any of his foster kids to live with entitlement, which is why he didn't give them all the money.
My wife gasps. He wrote that to you? I feel so bad. I looked at him as an old garden gnome. But look at him. He left everything to you. I feel heartily ashamed. I was the one cross with you for giving up your time to have breakfast with him. But I had no idea he felt so isolated. I can't believe people never interacted with him on cruises. He must have been so terribly lonely. Poor man. It's desperately sad.
What has happened to the furniture in this house? I asked the realtor.
Oh, Hogan wrapped it up in bubble wrap. He put it in the outbuilding. By all accounts, it's in good condition. And once the house has been refurbished, it can be replaced back into the property. There's some incredible antiques among the items. I dare say you've inherited them all. Some of them could fetch you a tidy sum. Better still, I gather there's an expensive collection of artwork in there that might fetch you a pretty penny. Or you might choose to keep it, of course.
And none of these treasures are stolen? How is that possible?
No, nothing was taken. Mr. Hogan hid everything behind barrel loads of hay, so no one would know the treasure trove was there. The solicitors did, of course. By all accounts, he was a resourceful man who thought outside of the box. I think he put everything away to refurbish the house himself. He couldn't do it in the end, after his wife died. He didn't have the energy, lost heart. I suppose you could say he lost his mojo, which is understandable in the circumstances. The estate agent shrugs. If it were me, I'd fall apart if my husband wasn't around. It couldn't have been easy for poor Mr. Hogan, losing his wife, as indeed it is for anyone. Folks said the couple were madly in love until the day she dropped down dead. Now, what's great about this property, that you might not realise, is the ruralness of your location. But you're not too far from town either, which is very beneficial. Now, if you look out of the windows, you will see prepossessing views overlooking a farmer's field. It's difficult to see them now, as the backyard is one sprawling, expansive, overgrown wilderness. But when the lawn is mown, you will be in awe of the spectacular scenery that you can feast your eyes upon. You will see beyond this house that there is a dividing picket fence overlooking a farmer's field, where he keeps horses. There's a sprawling wood grove that meanders down the left-hand side of the valley, stretching back for many miles, full of the most fabulous walking trails for your family to enjoy. Here's the good news, the great news if you like. Within the picket fence there's a gate, which gives you access to the farmer's field. You see, the original landowner of this property owned all the adjoining land. He sold the land off in his old age, but there was one stipulation. That was anyone that lived in this house could have direct access to the land for hikes and walks, and this legally signed document still applies today. So you are welcome to go rambling in the countryside. You won't be trespassing on the farmer's land. It's an added bonus. Come, says the estate agent, I need to show you the rest of the property. So me and Tess obediently trail behind her, torn between reluctance and curiosity. I discern that the iron radiator has been pulled out of the wall in the lower foyer, but the original oakwood floorboards are still perfectly in place. Only a handful of the panels are badly warped. Some are lightly wobbly and groan under your feet, but those are problems that can easily be fixed. There's a large leaded glass window over and above the grand mahogany front door. The heights of the ornate edge ceilings give a palatial feeling to the property, but silvery cobwebs dangle in every corner. Their spoke-like spiral wheels seem to twinkle in the light of the morning sunshine that infuses through the windows of the house. The windows of the house framed by curtains once so lavishly grand, so prestigious, now frayed, faded, dull, their ornate designs horribly bleached by the sun, the quality fabric now exhausted from wear and tear, a plethora of sun-damaged and ravaged by hungry moths. I'm struck by the inward revelation that at one time this house must have looked utterly magnificent. Juno, my teenage son, is walking ahead of us curiously, investigating every room, his grim expression revealing a strong disapproval. I knew he hated the house already, but his attitude almost immediately shifted when he saw the little area of the house that Hoggin had preserved for himself. Even I gasped at this exclusive, luxurious, fully furnished, well-appointed apartment within the house, upon which no expense had been spared, on the 3rd floor, big enough for all 3 of us to reside in, but like a grand suite in the Waldorf Astoria that had been superbly decorated, with state-of-the-art kitchen and very eclectic stylish furnishings, with fabulous views of the countryside that were spectacular. All this discreetly tucked away in a grand, dilapidated mansion, like a treasure trove in a dusky cave.
I don't understand, I say. The whole house is covered in graffiti. Why has this apartment escaped such brutality? It makes no sense at all.
Well, until a day ago, admits the estate agent, the solicitor was very good friends with Hogan Fisher. He boarded off this part of the house. He figured that vandals would get their grubby little hands on this place, so he ensured this part of the premises was cut off from prying eyes. His efforts seemed to have paid off. I'm sure this place would have been badly trashed otherwise. After viewing the colonial home, me and my wife and son Juno decide to move from Ohio to this colonial property, an 8-hour drive from Cleveland. We would live in the apartment area of the property and refurbish the remaining of the house, selling it on later for a lot more money. It was a profitable investment. We both sensed that this is what Hogan Fisher would have appreciated us doing, as we were preserving a heritage. 8 months later, it was hard to believe that the alterations were finally finished, that we were now living in such a beautiful part of the world. Thoughts of my life in Cleveland, Ohio, had deserted me. I was thoroughly enjoying this new life, and Jim Thorpe was a beautiful town indeed. In a short space of time, we'd made so many friends. My son had never been happier at his school, so thoughts of selling our property were far from our minds, as we loved living in this luxurious home that looked superb with all its original stylish furniture, now replaced. I had awoken one morning to discover the black and white cat lying at the bottom of our bed, as if he'd lain here before many times with Hogan Fisher. We adopted the cat, calling him Bibbs, because of his white bib on his chest. He fast became a much-beloved member of our family. One day as my wife was drying dishes around the sink, after we had finished dinner, I hear her screaming loudly. I quickly dash into the kitchen to see what the hell is wrong.
I saw a face at the window! A face at the window!
She explains.
It was staring at me! Big yellow eyes! It was terrifying! It disappeared! I don't know what it was!
I decide to investigate my wife's rather strange, curious account, and armed with my torchlight, I begin to investigate the yard. And that is when I see this tall, black silhouette gliding into the woodgrove, finally disappearing from sight. My first thought is,
What the hell is that?
My wife looks alarmed when she sees me grabbing my rifle, loading it, and quickly dashing out of the house.
"Did you see it too?" she asks.
"I saw something. I'll be back in a trice. I'm just going to investigate."
"But are you sure that's a good idea? Whatever this thing was, it was very scary, very intimidating."
"I won't be long,"
I say, opening the gate in the fence, dashing through the farmer's field hurriedly, which is thankfully empty of frolicking horses on this night. I am in the field now, stumbling awkwardly in my walking boots over stumps of uneven, rough turf that are quick to ensnare my feet in their treacherous, inconspicuous earthen traps. Then there are clandestine dips in the ground. Finally I manage to reach the tall vertical silhouettes of the trees that stretch towards the tenebrous heavens in a proud, regal, stately repose, all clustered together in a large, expansive group. The light of my torch guides the way as I enter this woodland oasis with a slight sense of trepidation, surprised to find that my heart is thudding in my chest. My breathing is fast and furious. I'm not actually sure why. I follow the direction of the idiosyncratic creature's movements as I try desperately to retrace its footsteps. I don't even know if I'm going the right way, or why I'm actually following this thing. But I feel as if I'm being pulled into this woodgrove, like a magnet thundering towards the iron filings, as if some outer-worldly, greater force beyond my own control is luring me to this place. I do fight the desire to abandon this crazy pursuit. But have you ever tried to separate a magnet from its polar opposite? It's not easy. For some reason, each step propels me ever forwards, and even though a foreboding reluctance, a hesitancy, a consternation, a sense of disquiet are my walking companions tonight, that whisper faint warnings in my ears, a dogged, tenacious obstinacy consumes me that is no match for those creeping doubts that are hammering at my head. Don't do it! Don't do it! Don't go in there! Whatever this thing was, my insatiable curiosity is aroused, governed by an overwhelming need to know. I want to find out exactly what I've seen. But a small part of me is reminding me that curiosity killed the cat. We all know this well. But even those warnings did nothing to curtail nor subdue my impassioned resolve to find answers. I don't want to be sitting at the breakfast table tomorrow morning, stirring my cornflakes around and saying,
"I saw a shadowy being darting into the woods last night, and I don't know the hell what it was."
That would annoy me greatly, like a buzzing fly you desperately want to squat and always eludes you. I had never been in the woodgrove before, but at night it felt inauspiciously bodeful. There was a soft silvery moonlight that puddled through the trees, caressing the unyielding darkness with an ethereal luminescence, so that some of the obscure undulating shapes of the trees could be more easily discerned. But in this esoteric, mysterious light, with its haunting, ghostly, foreboding qualities, the dark shadows that lingered through the trees seemed all the more menacing. I had this overwhelming sense that not only was I being watched, but scrutinized and studied, by eyes that hungrily hid beneath the twilight. The wind, with its gentle, soft breeze, blows through the trees in sweeping forward gusts, as if cold, icy hands are brushing against my face. The deciduous forest is filled with red maples, ginkgo, aspen, ash, and sumac trees, which appear to be jiggling and swaying their boughs. Yet despite the breeze, the forest is quiet. So quiet, in fact, I realise that even the frogs and crickets are not honouring the night with their usual tuneful chorus. This poignant revelation disturbs me somewhat. I've heard stories of hunters before, over the years, claiming that when the forest becomes ominously quiet like this, that there may be a predator in your midst. I clutch my rifle very tightly, as if to assure myself of the protection at my disposal, that offers me a persuasive reassurance. I know with the forest feeling as sinister as it does now, I should almost certainly make tracks back home. Then I see her. I stop dead in my tracks. my body freezing like an ice statue at a celebratory banquet. The soft moonlight streams through the cracks in the forest canopy, dipping hungrily through the branches, filtering over this outlandish creature, highlighting her form. I see her in her sizable glory. This was not what I was expecting to see. Not at all. I realised to my amazement I'm staring at a Bigfoot. For a moment, time stands still, as if holding back the hands of a clock. The creature does not flinch. She stares at me through deep-set treacle eyes that exude a bright yellow eyeshine. I feel as though she's looking right through me, reading my very thoughts. But all I'm thinking is, bloody hell! Is this a dream or what? The creature remains still, as if she comprehends my astonishment and is helping me absorb the reality of what I'm perceiving with a persevering patience. My heart thunders in my chest so loudly, my whole body quivers nervously. This creature, she is so large. She's built like a giant, with the gait and shape of a human. So intimidating, so daunting, so arrestingly lofty. Standing at easily 9 foot tall, 800 pounds, her majestic body is covered in long flowing dark hair that is moving as the wind does, caresses its silken waves that serve to only highlight the skin beneath, revealing the dense ripped muscle, accentuating her powerful build. She has the breasts of a hardened female athlete, small and firm. I notice her head seems to meander down her shoulders in a seamless sweep. The top of her head reaches a pronounced tip, but her leathery grey face is so human. Despite how all-consuming her presence is, I find her humanness makes her seem relatable, approachable, even familiar, as if we have much in common, even if we are extraordinarily different. I notice her face is rather feminine, reminding me of the pictures I've seen of the Egyptian queen Nefertiti, although her nose is considerably flatter against the face. She continues to study me curiously. I hear the words in my head. Do not be afraid. I mean you no harm. For a moment I tremble in my boots. Where the heck did that voice come from? I look around me, from the left to the right, as if to see if someone else is standing there, talking to me. But she is all I see. I realise that this curious creature was talking to me in my head, in some kind of telepathic exchange. Had she read my mind? Did she know that I was intimidated and daunted by her mighty presence? I'm quite sure she knew absolutely everything I was thinking, and that was not a good feeling at all. It made me feel so conspicuous, so vulnerable, so transparent. The creature's eyes are steadily fixed on me, as if her eyes have become arms that are holding me down so that I don't dare leave. She has no need to worry about that, based on how unstable I'm feeling on my legs right now. I hardly think I'm capable of moving off or running away. I feel like a wobbly, cumbersome camping table, missing 3 or 2 of its legs, and trying to support its weight on the remaining ones. A shoddy structure that is collapsing at the knees, soon to crumble. Even the rifle in my hands has loosened. My sweating fingers are causing it to slide away, until it lands precariously at my feet. I don't dare reach down to retrieve it. That would be a foolish thing to do. The creature might think I'm intending to use it on her. I'd never dare do such an outrageous thing. She may be benevolent and non-aggressive, but irrespective of her sweet, somewhat charming demeanour, I can't help but be afraid. Me and my wife went to a tiger sanctuary in Thailand once. We were led to the tiger enclosure and told we could cuddle the tiger. It was benign, with not a nasty bone in his body, we were assured. Did any of us actually cuddle that tiger? Absolutely not, for we knew that irrespective of how docile the tiger appeared, we were still in the presence of a dangerous predator. I never saw one single visitor stepping beyond the boundaries of just stroking the tiger's coat, but even that they did with a degree of grudgingly restrained hesitancy. That's what it felt like in the presence of this Bigfoot. I was fully aware of her power, her strength and might, and my own fragility by contrast.
The female Bigfoot blasts the silence with a shrill whistle that travels through the woodgrove. Another Bigfoot appears on the scene, also female, but shorter and stockier, and in her arms she's carrying a human baby in a pink onesie. The next thing I know is that a little baby that looks recently born is being lowered into my arms. It is fully human and begins to cry. I am so stunned, I don't actually know how to react. "We found her," I hear the words in my head. "You must take care of her. We have chosen you." The very large Bigfoot taps me on the back and then glides away into the forest and is gone from my sight. Although as I leave, I hear some whistles being exchanged in the forest and realise that there must be other Bigfoots in the grove, helping in this rescuing effort. As I trudge back to the farmer's meadow, with a baby in one arm, a torch and a rifle in another, I finally make my way back to the farmhouse. My wife races outside. Her face is looking very distressed and distraught, but on seeing the bundle in my arm, she does a double take.
"Oh my God! Where did you find her? She's so tiny. Where did she come from? She's adorable, beautiful."
I decided not to tell her about the Bigfoots I'd encountered, as even I was finding it hard to get my head around my incongruous story. And I lived it. I knew if my wife made such claims to me, I'd think she was making it all up. I just told her I found the baby. I lied to her about the Bigfoot, telling her I wasn't able to see what the shadowy being was. Tessa's account. I do not know if our lives are mapped out before we're born, whether perhaps we're expected to travel down certain paths or not, as somehow it seemed no accident that Hogg and Fisher's lavish resplendent home had now become ours. It felt right. I will say this, from the moment we moved into the house, leaving aside the morbid messages of the graffiti, the obvious neglect, and of course the ghastly smell left by some unwelcome guests, the house fitted us like a glove, only it was rather large for a family of 3. Would have been much more suitable for a family like the Von Trapps in The Sound of Music. That was the kind of family me and my husband had always longed for. It was unfortunate after the birth of my son Juno. I was given a hysterectomy due to a prolapsed uterus and was told I could never have kids again. Let's just say that I was more than a little devastated. I do remember crying for many weeks about it. I could also tell that this revelation had hit my husband hard in the guts. He had adored the idea of a family bursting at the seams with a plethora of children. Now it was not meant to be. Of course he was realistic, and since we had so many financial issues earlier on in our lives, and were struggling to take care of just one kid, we had come to the swift conclusion that maybe we were not meant to have more children. We reached that place of resigned acceptance when you learn to accept the lot you've been dealt. As my husband was so quick to point out, some people, despite years of trying, still do not have any children of their own, and we were lucky to just have one. I knew he was right, of course. I tried to be happy about it, but it was a losing, defeated battle. My mother seemed to think that buying a garden gnome for me would ultimately solve all my problems, and I say this without exaggeration. Some people can be peculiar, and my mother is one of those people.
"I find the garden gnomes so terribly cheerful," she told me. "You don't need more children, my dear. If you have 100 garden gnomes in your yard, you'll never ever feel alone. And better still, they don't leave home like your children do. They don't disappoint you like that. Mine have been such a great source of comfort for me over the years. Apart, of course, from the rude, obnoxious letters from neighbours telling me I'm lowering the tone of our neighbourhood. Can you believe it? What a cheek, some people."
I could believe it, although I said absolutely nothing. But I certainly loathe going to visit my mother's eccentric home for that very reason, as wherever you look, you can't escape a garden gnome leering at you. And if that's not bad enough, my mother has one in her downstairs toilet, sitting opposite the loo on a glass dresser. I felt as if this thing was just staring at me when I was taking a leak. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I got such a dreadful shock. My mum said she put it there so that the guests did not feel lonely when they went to the toilet. Are you kidding me?
Long before we moved to this grand colonial house, before my husband had even met Hogg and Fisher on that cruise liner, one night I had a very strange, peculiar dream that was so lucid I couldn't tell whether it was real or not. I remember I'd never seen this woman a day in my life. She was about 4 foot tall, petite, with short grey hair, brown sparkling eyes that twinkled with humour. I remember she wore a bright emerald green tunic dress, which had tassels on the end of the fabric and along the collar line. She wore white shoes and a striking emerald pendant around her neck that glittered so brightly. "Don't you worry, dear," she'd said to me. "One day you'll have a big family. It's all been arranged. Just be patient. It'll come your way." I thought nothing of this strange, incredulous event, but it disturbed me that I had a dream of a woman's face so clear in my mind that I could remember every feature and detail of her face and her clothes. In my normal dreams, I have just impressions and images that are so much more abstract and vague. The pictures almost hazy and blurred in my mind, and recalling the details is very difficult. But this dream was different. It was pronounced, eloquent, and exceedingly detailed, and as translucently clear as spring water. Once the building construction had occurred in our home. On one occasion, one of the builders came forwards to me and said, "Ma'am, there's a woman waiting to see you at the front door." I quickly went to the front door, but no one was there, nor was there any sign of a strange truck in the drive. If there was someone there, where had they got to? "There's no one there," I told the builder. "What did this woman look like?"
"Oh," he said, "she was 4 foot tall, with short grey hair and brown eyes."
"I don't know anyone as short as that," I told him. "What was she wearing?"
"She was wearing an emerald green tunic dress, with tassels on the upper collar and fringe of the garment, an emerald pendant around her neck, and white shoes on her feet. She looked very smart, very well dressed indeed."
When the builder said this, my heart almost skipped a beat. The woman he was describing sounded like the woman from my dreams over 9 years ago. How was that even possible?
"Are you all right, ma'am?" says the builder. "You've gone quite pale."
Days passed, and one day one of the builders, in the process of renovating the bookshelves in the library, brought me a large cardboard box he'd found lying in the corner of a cupboard. He explained,
"It's up to you, ma'am, if you want to throw this out or not, but I thought I needed to bring it to your attention."
"Thank you," I said. "Just put it down in the kitchen for me." I'm not sure what I was expecting to uncover in this box. The first thought that came into my head was that this was a long since forgotten box of old Christmas decorations, but it was best to check the contents before discarding anything. I rubbed my hand curiously across the box. I realised my hands are now covered in a fine dust. I used a pair of paper scissors to cut through the tape that binds the cardboard together. I discovered to my amazement that the box contains piles of old letters, which are love letters written to Ruth Fisher from her husband Hoggin Fisher before they ever got married. Some of the letters are the most romantic letters I have ever had the pleasure to read, written on high-quality paper with beautiful curly writing. I then stumble across a framed picture of a woman in a photograph, a woman I recognise. She's smiling brightly into the camera. She's 4 foot tall, with grey short hair, brown eyes, wearing an emerald tunic dress with tassels on the collar and the bottom fringe of the tunic. Even more astonishing is she's wearing the emerald pendant that I'd seen in my dream. More striking than anything else is that this is the woman I'd seen in my dream 9 years earlier, telling me I would have a big family one day, and to more or less be patient about it. Furthermore, the builder had described seeing a woman asking for me at the front door, who subsequently disappeared into thin air, but she fitted exactly the same description. My heart is now racing. I try to make sense of everything. I found dozens of photographs of Hoggin and his wife in younger days, with about 12 children in the household. I recall the realtor saying that Hoggin and his wife would take in foster children in their house and raise them in a loving environment as their own. It is in a separate box I discover the emerald pendant. I put it around my neck. I somehow sensed that Hoggin's wife Ruth would want me to have it. One night I was lying on my bed in the bedroom, reading a book. My husband was in one of the outbuildings with my son, attending to a couple of antiques from the house that needed repolishing. My husband liked to teach Juno everything he knew about carpentry. Juno was excellent with his hands. Recently he'd put up the cabinetry in a kitchen for his best friend's family home, and they were very impressed with the results. So much like his father, Juno was exceedingly good with his hands. I was alone on my bed, with the black and white cat Bibbs lying across my body. He looked completely passed out after the cooked salmon I'd given him earlier on in the evening. All of a sudden I hear a woman's beautiful voice tumbling across the hallway, singing a tuneful song. It's Mitch Miller's song, The Yellow Roses of Texas. That was a song my dad used to love to sing when I was a little girl, so for me it carries the nostalgic perfumed scent of very sweet times that I spent with him. I sit up in bed with a start. Bib jumps off the bed. He pads over to the door. He behaves as if he's greeting someone in the doorway, someone I can't see. He's rubbing against their legs and purring, but no one is there. There are no legs to rub against. I watch this bizarre incident with a level of trepidation. What can Bib see that I can't? And who was that singing that song? I had distinctly heard a woman's voice. I never imagined that. Is there someone in our house, or is there a television left on somewhere? But no sooner am I satisfied after checking every room in the house and being met with a firm silence. I know that no one is there. So I retire to my bed once again, and the moment my head hits the pillow, I hear the tuneful song yet again teasing me. Whoever this woman is, she can most certainly sing. I leap out of bed frantically, dashing down the sweeping staircase, switching on the lights everywhere, calling into rooms, "Hello, is anyone there?" But there is no answer. In truth, I'm not sure exactly what I'm feeling. I'm not scared, but I'm not exactly enamoured either. Someone is moving around my house, singing a fabulous song, but then no one is there. I realise that this house of ours is steeped in a long, rich, vibrant history. It does, of course, occur to me that what I may have experienced could be outer-worldly. I decide to go into the kitchen to make myself a cup of chamomile tea with honey, to calm down my frazzled nerves, as every hair on my body is standing up on edge. I'm preparing the tea, and then there she is, standing before me, as crystal clear as the day. The petite 4-foot woman, with grey hair, brown sparkling eyes, and an emerald tassel dress. She's even wearing the same emerald pendant around her neck that I now frequently wear. For a moment I think I'm going absolutely mad. The woman of my lucid dream 9 years prior, whom revealed herself to me before me and my husband ever went on that cruise liner. She told me I'd have a big family, and this was before my husband even met the old man, Mr. Fisher. This was the same woman from the photograph I found in the cardboard box. Her name was Ruth Fisher, the woman the builder had seen standing at the front door, requesting to see me. She's now in my kitchen, smiling warmly at me, as if it's the most natural thing in the world to do. But there is nothing natural about this encounter whatsoever. The woman I am seeing right now has been easily dead for over 14 years. This is Hoggan Fisher's wife. Why is she here? What does she want from me? You could be forgiven for thinking she was real, as for a short while she's like the most perfect hologram, vivid, clear, every detail of her face pronounced, although there is a static electric sound in her presence. For a moment my throat is so scratchy, even though I want to say something, I just can't. I stand in the kitchen gawking at the woman, in abject astonishment. Is this really happening? Of course not. This can't be happening. It just can't. Ruth looks at me and says, "Your first will be here soon. You'll be having 12. I told you it'll be a large family. It's all been arranged. I must go now." The apparition of Ruth turns around and walks away, and as she does so, she becomes fainter and fainter and fainter until she's finally gone. I'm standing there in unabated shock, my knees trembling, my whole body shaking, my mind only articulating one thought. What the hell is this all about? Of course I wanted to tell my husband what I'd seen. I'd seen the woman who was married to Hoggan, who had lived in this house with so many children that she had fostered over the years. This same woman had visited me in a dream, before we even met Hoggin on that cruise liner. If that wasn't crazy enough, I'd seen a full-bodied apparition manifest in my newly refurbished kitchen, telling me I'm going to have 12 children, with one now on the way. I knew it must be this woman called Ruth, whom had been singing the Yellow Roses of Texas as well. She had been married to Hoggin in life. She had come to tell me this from beyond the grave. It seemed ludicrously nonsensical, so I kept this matter to myself, marvelling as to what it could actually mean, and wondering if it meant anything at all. The night I'd seen the strange face staring at me through the kitchen window, I don't believe I've ever felt as much fear as I did in that moment. It was dark outside. I could discern this daunting, huge, shapely silhouette, easily 8 foot tall, the owner of a massive pair of yellow eyes, staring in at me through the window. I'd been drying plates with a towel that I was placing on the drying rack besides the large Frankie sink. My hand loosened its grip on the plate. It slid out of my hand, hitting the floor with a mighty, thunderous crash. I screamed, the sound of my voice echoing through the high ceilings of the house. I hear my husband's feet thundering down the sweeping staircase, as fast as they can. He darts into the kitchen, and one look at my pale face drained of colour, the broken plate on the floor, and my shaking silhouette, he knows something is terribly wrong.
"There was a big black face at the window, with yellow eyes," I explained to him. "But it's gone. It was looking at me. It was looking in at me. It was so scary. These huge eyes." My husband's expression looks cynical, as if he doubts my account. But to allay my fears, he grabs his rifle, investigates our yard.
"I've seen a dark silhouette dashing through the farmer's field into the woodgrove. I'm going to find out what it's all about," he tells me.
I hear him loading his rifle.
"Please don't, I beg. You don't know what this thing is. What if it's a dangerous, aggressive predator? We don't know what we could be dealing with."
Of course, my husband had ignored me. I watched in horror as he dashes through the meadow into the woodgrove. I wait and wait for my husband to return. It seems like time has stood still, as every click of the kitchen clock seems to move at an agonizingly slow pace. Finally, I see the welcome, familiar figure of my husband returning home through the woodgrove. He's getting closer and closer. He's now in the meadow. He'll be back home any second. The relief I feel is immeasurable. In the distance, I see 2 dark, or is it 3, shadowy creatures watching him. What the hell? I can see their yellow eye shine. As my husband gets ever closer, I discover he's carrying a newly born baby in his arms. I'm completely flabbergasted. I quickly cradle the baby. She's beautiful and tiny. But what is she doing in a woodgrove on her own? Where is the mother? This baby has only recently been born. It still has a small piece of umbilical cord attached to its belly button. To cut a long story short, the police never found out the origin of the mysterious baby. There were no reports of a baby going missing or being abducted. So how the Bigfoot female found that little baby is an enigmatic mystery. I am left to conclude that a young teenage girl gave birth to it and just abandoned it, possibly dumped it somewhere. Needless to say, we fell in love with the baby. We adopted her, along with 11 other children, in a very short period of time. It was exactly as Ruth had told us, told me, should I say, in my dream, that we would have a big family one day. Thankfully, we had the financial resources, the time, and the big home to have the large family we'd always dreamed of. Some things are clearly just meant to be. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.